I'll give it a couple seconds. So welcome viewers, welcome listeners to Religion Zero, number 25. I'm your host, Brook Potter, where you're welcome to subscribe and join my channel. We are with the panel once again discussing the very interesting and controversial topic of can all religions be true? This is the round table, and how is everybody doing now that everybody's here and we're all logged in? Amos, how you doing, man? You woke up? You got some sleep? I'm liking the shirt, man. Robert Frank would be very pleased.
Yeah. Good morning, everyone. Doing all right. Well, probably better than I could be, but just woke up.
Alive and kicking is always a plus.
Yes. I think literally, like I could still see the sun kind of coming up a little bit too.
Yeah. Well, I'm a basement dweller now. I don't even know what the sun looks like anymore.
That's crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah,
well, Corey, you're finally on camera with us, man. I mean, it's good to finally see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I decided to stop doing my Black Label Logic cosplay for a while and going back to being a real person.
Just in time for Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
That's going to be a good show.
It's my countercultural. But yeah, I'm doing all right. Like I mentioned before, I am in a basement right now, and I'm trying to rent the upstairs. But I think we're actually switching to the Airbnb plan until the season is up. So I'm going to go furnish it over the next week, and then we're going to Airbnb it from now until like January. And then I'm planning on either trying to rent it furnished or what do you call it? Just resell it all and get all my money back, right? Because it's all going to be used stuff anyway. But that's a new game plan. But yeah, right now I'm in a basement which has no windows except for one in the nice, Heather. But yeah, the only window is the one in my bedroom and one in the front entryway before you come downstairs. So where my kitchen is, my living room, my office where I am now, absolutely no windows, and you have no idea what time it is ever. And that's starting to get to me. It's like a little bit of like that weird, like, yeah, it's like one of those weird isolation, like mind mess with you things. I have no idea what time it is or if the sun's out ever.
Well, it is good to have you on camera for a change. You know, as I say, your Black Label Logic cosplay thing wasn't working out as much as we'd like, but you know, it's good.
Mm-hmm. And hopefully I'll have real lighting eventually, but we'll see if I can get some actual good stuff. Because right now I have fake light right here in this area because the other light is behind me and it just makes my face black. So
a silhouette. Yeah. You'll get it sorted. I mean, so guys, anything interesting went on this week? CONK, anything interesting this week?
In my life, no. In my news life, there's tons. Seems like every 2 or 3 hours there's a new breaking news that everybody has to talk about. So
yes, definitely.
It's kind of getting exhausting.
Yeah. What about you, Amos? Anything interesting went on this week?
Did anything interesting happen this week? Well, I'll answer your question by asking you this: is the Pope Catholic?
Oh, good question. CapX did an entire expose on that. We shouldn't be shitting on the Catholics without a Catholic here to defend them, but we'll see how it goes.
Oh no, that was just my answer to it. Is there anything new this week?
Yeah, fair enough. But that's actually because he made some comments about socialism and other things. There is actually a bunch of people questioning that very thing. Is the Pope actually Catholic?
Is the Coke Catholic?
Yeah.
Can we have like a Marxist Pope superhero action figure? Marxist Pope.
They've had that, man. I mean, liberation theology back in the day was like a big thing. You know, all of Latin America was into that.
Oh man, yeah. And then now people are, of course, Pope. Ever since pretty much politics and Jesus were spoken in the same sentence, there was always, what political leaning would Jesus be?
Oh yeah, I hate that question.
Yeah, that's an interesting one.
The question automatically assumes dumb things, even asking the question.
Indeed.
Well, Jesus obviously was, in alignment with the Romans because, he was totally chill.
Well, not exactly, because he did call the woman a dog, but yeah, we'll definitely have a discussion about Jesus and politics at some point, I'm sure. So, gentlemen, are we up for today's discussion?
Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. And
We'll
as
see.
I say, we're probably going to touch a little bit on some of the variances, even within Christianity. As we've discussed previously in other podcasts, I lean closer to Eastern Orthodox. So there are reasons why I'm not particularly fond of Protestantism, evangelicalism, and Catholicism. And we could probably each kind of discuss, well, this is where I lie. These are my problems with said other denominations, as well as we look at some of the various religions. So starting with the main point, I mean, this is a broad topic. So what are people's thoughts on can all religions be true? Corey, let's start with you, man.
I mean, logically, that doesn't make sense, right? If two people believe contradicting things, they can't both be true. Usually, it's more likely both are wrong, but both are right doesn't really fit up to logic scrutiny, if that makes sense.
Sure.
So, like, if Amos said I ate an apple, and I say Amos didn't eat an apple, can we both be true if we're talking about the exact same experience, right? One of those or neither of those happened.
So would you say that extends to all faiths? Not all of them could be true. Could parts of them be true?
Yeah, I mean, like, and here's how I describe this: is like you might not believe in the main tenets of their religion, but that doesn't mean they're not smart people, right? Or they can't be right about other things. And like, and like, I hate to bring it back into politics again, but there's always that question of like, would you be willing to vote for an atheist president if he's competent? Yeah.
Exactly.
Right? You know what I mean? And like, you don't need a Christian algebra textbook in school, right? Who cares? You know what I mean? There's so many other facets of the world that have nothing to do with religion that like there's this weird diatribe where like, oh, I need Christian everything. I need Christian t-shirts and Christian school and Christian this and Christian that. And I think that's stupid. But but I think they can be smart in other facets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the religion aspect of it is necessarily compatible.
Fair. I think that's a fair assessment. Amos, what are your thoughts, man? We'll do the two questions. Are all religions true? And if not, do all religions have truth?
Well, it just depends on what you mean truth. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I'll get my Kermit the Frog voice out. No,
you didn't even clean your room.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what you mean by truth and what is it. So
we're doing Bill Clinton.
Yeah. Clinton, Peterson, it's all the same. And that's the thing. Yeah, I think Heather brings a good point. All religions have truth. I think the good example that Corey was just saying was, on one hand you have the, I ate an apple, but then someone else says I didn't eat an apple. But here's what those two beliefs have in common: the apple and me.
You just don't know what happened to it.
Exactly. So, and it's in the same way with other religions. Some religions intersect at like, there's a lot of religions that will believe in the existence of Jesus. Just not necessarily what he was, who he was, what he said, things like that. Some will say he's a prophet. Some will say he's just some dude. And then, of course, when you get into some of the fringes of certain beliefs, you'll have different interpretations of the likeness of Jesus and such. But the fact of the matter is, there is a Jesus that exists across so many religions. And then even if you look a lot of like, sort of the melting pot of beliefs, just different religions, different types of religious beliefs, you'll get a lot of interesting attributes across the board too. But not all religions are true, but yeah, I think I actually agree with what Heather was saying there in the chat. Was I think all religions have truth. Mm-hmm. There's no one Because if one is true, then it could preclude the possibility that basically all the other ones are completely untrue, or kind of excludes anything else.
Or they could both be false.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then if there's, yeah, like what do you mean by true? It's, you have to set up certain parameters. What is it that's true? Like, okay.
Yes, it exists.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
Buddhism exists, but that doesn't mean I necessarily think it's like completely true, right?
And what are you dictating that's necessarily true? The beliefs and sort of the historicity of your beliefs, like the historical context. Okay. Jesus.
I mean, this is our next discussion, so we're probably going to discuss like, okay, Buddhism. What do we think is true? What do we think is not true? We'll do that with Islam,
right?
And a
so
couple other
that will
things.
be that'll basically, yeah, the difference between like sort of the historical side of those religions, like who did what to found certain tenets, versus the tenets themselves. Are those true? Like, is killing wrong? Because it's a present idea in many religions. Well, that's true. At least humans in general.
I don't know about that.
That's
that one's debatable. Yeah, murder and killing are not the same thing, right?
Thank you, Corey.
Well, then there's that. Yeah, there's the interpretations of that. Some religions go as far as killing is wrong. Some go at least as far as murder is wrong.
They can go even lower and say some even think self-defense is wrong. Right?
Yes. Some pacifists.
Yeah, the pure pacifist versus the self-defense. And then there's even some that would probably not have any of those beliefs.
And there's some religions that love war crimes, right? you got a big plethora there, right?
Yeah, indeed.
I know it's plethora, but plethora is how I was learning to say it. I'm going to keep saying it. It's my roots.
Like, I mean, it's Pandora's box, right?
Pandora's box, yeah.
Pandora's. Are we talking about politicians now? Do we need to get some? Do we need special colored scarves?
Yeah.
Pandora's box.
Anyways, yeah, I don't want to take away from the next topic. Then I guess as we get into that.
I mean, we'll get it, but I mean, just to share my view. Yeah, I share both of your views. Obviously, there are some views within each religion that are contrary. So Judaism believes in one God. Christianity believes one God in three persons. The Jews would reject that. Islam would reject that. Although they're all monotheistic gods, our perception of God is different. Buddhism, there are sects of Buddhism that are atheistic. There is no God, right? We are the God. We are the consciousness of the universe, this type of thing. So yeah, I would agree that, look, not every aspect of every religion could possibly be true. But I agree with Corey and Amos in saying there probably are aspects to it that are true, or at least do not contradict enough to cause any kind of theological problem. I guess we could say that. Yeah, and I think in that respect, it's interesting. There's a very interesting psalm. I don't know if, well, obviously you've probably all read it. Psalms 82. It talks about God walking amongst the gods. So he's kind of acknowledging that there are these other gods. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, it's the idols, it's the this, the that, and the other. But when you actually read through the discussion, he actually casts them down into earth. And he basically says, y'all will all experience, basically y'all are useless, y'all are pointless. I'm throwing you on the earth. You will all experience the death of men. And then I will rise you back up again. Very bizarre psalm. Now, of course, this is literary and poetic language. We really don't know what this means. But at least in some aspect, there does seem to be this idea that God is God of gods, King of kings, Lord of lords. So there may actually be other histories and stuff like that are seeping through the spiritual realm that gives us exactly what you're saying. Glimpses of truth. I'm not saying it's all true, right, but it's an interesting discussion. Gods. Yeah, maybe the D&D gods, man, So yeah, let's kind of get into that. I mean, have either of you had any experience with any other religion outside of Christianity? And if so, what did you agree with and what did you disagree with? So Amos, we'll start with you this time.
Outside of Christianity.
You would almost have to define that too.
Well, that's a good point, because even within that sphere, outside of your present belief, have you ever shared a different faith tradition? Let's say that. Even if it's within Christianity, for instance.
See, I'm probably totally like I'm kind of taking the stance like with CONK is like I'm overthinking it a bit. Like, okay, which religions here? Growing up in Taiwan, there was definitely an exposure to sort of the combination of sort of the mainstream Buddhism and of course the local sort of folk religion belief. Like Buddhism has a tendency to mix with folk beliefs.
Yes.
So you'll go to the temple and there's Buddha, but then there's all these like other guys there too that are like connected with Buddha. So like either other Buddhas, like people who are enlightened, because since Buddha is not really like the god, it's more so just that. And I was almost gonna add this, but it is Christian, but in nature. But it's interesting how like I would have to ask this later, but consider the idea. What if like the difference between Protestantism and Catholicism is sort of the almost, not that it is, almost polytheistic nature of Catholicism with the patron saints.
They're like half gods.
Interesting premise.
Maybe. Yeah.
Right, because they pray to so many more patron saints, whereas Christians just focus on Jesus and God.
Good distinction. Good distinction. I don't think that's it, because the Orthodox do it too. It's not exactly the same. It's like how we would ask somebody to pray for us. So if I ask AMOS,
but they're already dead.
Yeah, but so they actually have the veil between life and death is not seen as pronounced. They're basically asking the saints on the other side
so
to pray
is that
for
almost
us.
Ancestor worship?
No, it's asking, just like I believe you're here. If you were to die, you and me are still connected, and I could ask you to pray for me. That's at least that's the Orthodox.
Even say, I want this patron saint of so and so to watch over me.
I never got into the saints' prayers, but in that respect, with the Catholics, yeah, I would definitely agree that they attribute a lot of omniscience to the saints in that respect. That I would disagree.
like patron saints that have certain functions would kind of pray for you, but also in a way, the way they go about asking for that, praying for them is almost like asking for them to watch over them. And I'm like, so are they like, it's kind of like how in some religions there's like the god, and then there's like what are considered like immortals that serve that god.
Right, like a council.
Yeah, and some Asian religions will have certain aspects of that. And then here we have Catholics that believe in all that. So
yeah, Orthodox too. They believe in praying to the saints, but the difference is they don't necessarily make them as omniscient as some of the Catholics. But it is the same premise. Like there's no separation between the life and the death. I could ask my dead father to pray for me, kind of thing. That's kind of their thinking, and I would agree with you. I think in that framing, I don't have a problem with it, but in practice. Just like, okay, for on the same distinction between Protestants and the Virgin Mary with the Catholics, they say they don't worship Mary, but in practice, it sure as hell looks a lot like worship.
Yeah, she would be a stronger case for like a non-Godhead individual that they pray to ask to pray for them.
Yeah, especially if you go in like Latin America, you get all the cool statues and candles, right?
Yeah, there's a lot
Jesus'
of veneration.
Mom. Yeah,
and some of them don't make the distinction. They say this is the mother of God, and the Orthodox would have a problem with that. No. She's the mother of Jesus Christ. We're not going to go and say that she is the mother.
And it's
of
really
God.
it's the mother of like sort of the physical body of Jesus Christ,
right? The physical
so
incarnation.
Like she didn't give birth to it, the third piece of the Godhead.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so there's that whole thing, and then you just consider the of course the just to put it bluntly, the merchandising and the overall symbolism. There's so much among Catholics. There's so many like the T-shirts, the necklaces, the merchandise of
Yeah, but I mean we do it too. But
yeah, to be fair, everybody does it.
Yeah.
Gotta pay those bills, man.
The CCU,
unless you're making tents.
The CCU, the Catholic Cinematic Universe.
But I mean, before we start going into the Christianity is a big sphere. With your exposure to Buddhism and what would be the folk religion. Did you see aspects of it that you actually agreed with, and what was something that you would disagree?
So in terms of agreement, would definitely a lot of Asian culture is rooted in some of those beliefs. So, general respect for your elders and even a respect for ancestors and such. I think that's in general is just could be a good attitude, but because of that, there's a deeper appreciation for where you came from.
Right.
In that sense, and almost where there's that religious aspect. And but of course they kind of go further and they pray too, and it's not necessarily like a prayer, so you would go to like in Taiwan you have um we call it, it's grave cleaning, tomb cleaning, whatever you want to call it. There's a day that is for honoring the dead, where you go to their grave, their tomb, wherever you have them, to sort of clean up. So you go somewhere, and this is an interesting thing too. Is here in the U.S., like tombstones. How often have you seen in America a tombstone with someone's picture on it?
I haven't seen a lot of
Rarely.
American graveyards, so I wouldn't know.
Yeah, but okay,
Dude, that's my
for
spot.
Corey. You ever seen a tombstone or some sort of thing, at graveyards, cemeteries and such, with someone's face? You usually have their name, the years that they lived, and maybe something on a saying, but
Some hallmark comment.
Yeah, but it's usually just name and the years they lived, right?
Right.
In Taiwan, they'll have the faces, so they'll actually have almost not like in literal, but kind of like a passport photo, but it's printed on an actual piece.
Literal sketches me out, man.
And it's just it's almost a passport photo of their face. Granted, it's something a little more something you can look at, not be creeped out looking at, but it'll kind of show okay, so there's the name. Because another thing is I think it's just the limitation of Chinese, so some people might have similar names, but it's the name, the years, and then it'll have a picture of their face.
That's obviously a new thing, because obviously pictures haven't been around that long. So that's an interesting.
Right. But that's very prominent among.
Is it for people to come and talk to their ancestors, so they have a visual thing? Is that, would you say?
I think there's a little bit of that. But okay. I even remember some of my older relatives. So I think my great grandmother on my mom's side. So her grandmother, yeah. Her and her husband had black and white photos of their faces on the stones on their tombs. But we would go there, we would clean up, and then we would put the kind of like the Buddhist incense, and there'd be a sort of paying of respects and such. So that overall, and then because of that, that's sort of built in, that's ingrained into the society, not just respecting the elders that came before us that are now passed, but also it kind of extends to then, it includes respecting your elders who are currently present as well. And
you'd say that's something that you agree with?
Yeah, that's very much in a lot of, that's kind of in the religion as well, because there's certain beliefs that will kind of intertwine with sort of the respect for the dead. So rituals, practices, customs, such like that.
Okay. Corey, I want to get your thoughts on that. Have you had any exposure to any religions or sects other than where you presently lie? And is there anything that you agree with or disagree with?
I thought different kinds of sex that's not Christian. What?
Sex.
Kama Sutra, bro.
Yeah. That's
I totally believe in that, bro.
That's explicit way of how to love your neighbor.
Yeah, we love Song of Songs over here, but
yeah, exactly.
Oh man,
get this Bible study,
Get that pomegranate.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of experience, and sometimes it's on accident. Sometimes I've seeked it out. But I've gone to mosques and done Muslim services. I've met a lot of people, especially in Colorado. You get the full diversity because they're very hippie over there. And you'll meet a lot of interesting religions. Some you probably never even heard of, right?
Oh, you got the Hare Krishnas out there.
Oh yeah, they're in the airport. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, what?
You don't have Hare Krishna? Yeah, probably do. They're not very common in America, but yeah, they are out there.
But we had like a Baha'i church, which most people have never heard of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's a lot of stuff in Colorado, specifically in the Boulder area, because that's where all hippies are born, right? It's the hippie mecca. But I've gotten a lot of experience, a lot of them, and like, I don't know, it's interesting. Even though I would disagree with them theologically, I think it's really good to realize they're just like people just grinding out their day, right? I don't get the whole like hating all people of a different religion because it's not yours. It just, I don't know why. It never really flies with me. First of all, they're all human, right?
Yes.
That's something good to point out. But yeah,
in case people didn't know.
Yeah, and I think you could still always find some kind of small truths in them, unless it's like a straight up like money making machine. Like we've talked about like Scientology obviously is like a money making machine. There's been some cults, that are really just there that are sex and money making machines, things like that. But I mean, for the most part, a lot of them are talking about, and this is why I would say you can always find some partial truths in there, is because the genuine faiths, they are still talking about the human experience, right? And so I think for the most part, most major religions all talk about the similar issue of life sucks ass, right? We just have very different solutions on what to do with that, right? And I think, honestly, I would say the closest to, I guess, the full Christian belief would probably be the Eastern religions like Buddhism and Hinduism. I would say they're upwards to almost 50% right, because that's kind of their main focus. They just have different solutions, but I mean we're almost on the same page in regards to like why the world sucks, the idea of suffering and all of those things, and why people do dumb shit and all of those kinds of things. It's just we have very different solutions to that, right? And so, I don't know, I would say all of them in general are still going off of the human condition. They just have different solutions to that human condition.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
I like what you said there. I don't know if my friend is watching, but I have a friend, he's Sikh. So again, that's an offshoot of Eastern religion. It's out of India. It's not the Hinduism. It's a different type. There's a lot of history with that. We have a bit of that in Trinidad and Tobago as well. And I would completely agree with you guys that I think God could use anything, right? I think, look, if somebody is in a place and there's no Christianity around and the dominant religion is Islam, for instance, and I've seen this happen personally, God will use Islam to try and bring faith into that individual. I know a guy who was hooked on drugs, and we've seen the testimonies of people, oh, I've given my life to Jesus and it cleaned up my life, this, that, and the other. I've seen that exact same testimony for somebody talk about Islam, that they've, coming to Islam, saved their life, they got out of drugs and this, that, and the other and stuff like that. So I think God could use
extra wives. It's great. It's a good deal.
Well, yes. We'll get into the differences in a minute, but yeah, definitely. For me personally, when I first came to Christianity, I didn't know anything. I was not raised Christian. I didn't, my household were kind of secular in many respects. It was the Jehovah's Witnesses that basically were the first people to give me a Bible and actually got me to read the Bible. Now, I don't agree with anything the Jehovah's Witnesses pretty much preach today, right?
Was it in their translation too?
Yeah. I actually had one of the, New World Translations or whatever it is. Ironically, their Bible is brilliant at proving the Trinity, which is a doctrine they don't believe, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, God used the Jehovah's Witnesses to get me to use the Bible, to read the Bible. So I think God could use anything. And I think he's always on a journey of drawing people to himself and revealing himself to them. You may start in one stream, but he's always drawing us and drawing us and drawing us, which is why, look, when nobody has perfect doctrine, nobody's got it all figured out, we can believe a lot of things wrong and still be worshiping, in essence, the only real God, right? So the old analogy goes off that I think this is an Eastern story as well, where this Raj brought, I think, 12 blind men into a room and asked them to feel basically what was an elephant. He didn't tell them that. Right. You know the story.
Yeah.
And, everybody's, the truth is like a big tree trunk, and, it's like a snake, and it's this, that, and the other. And everybody got a piece of it, although it took the Raj to basically put the whole picture together and basically say, well, look, yes, they've got pieces of it, but they don't have the full picture. And I think to some degree that is what's happened with a lot of the world's religions. And ironically, for at least in my perspective, Christianity can be that overarching theosis, that overarching theology that says, look, everybody's been affected, everybody's been included. You're on that journey. You're constantly being drawn into truth. You may not have the full truth now. You might be in a completely different religion, but God is pulling on those strings to bring you to himself from everywhere. At least that's my perspective. What do you guys think? Yeah?
Yeah. I know that story, but I don't know if I agree with it, is my thing.
Sure. Why? Yeah. I mean, so it's a parable.
Yeah. But I mean, if we're considering ourselves Christians and that we believe, for the most part, what the Bible says, right? Isn't that us seeing the whole elephant and the other people are guessing, or no?
I mean, yes, that will be our arrogant claim to being the one true truth.
Yeah.
Right. But let's be fair, right? If there was a Muslim panel that was having this discussion, they'd say the same thing. They would basically spin around and be like, well, the Quran is the full picture, right? But yes, we can probably disagree with, I mean, let's probably get into it. I mean, do you have any experience with Islam, Corey? I don't know if you...
Oh, yeah.
Is there a reason why you're not Islamic or Muslim at the moment?
Yeah, I don't think their version of history and theology checks out, even, on basic historical facts kind of thing. The Quran and some of their old traditions are kind of parallel to a lot of Old Testament stuff, right? But they have it all slightly different, but we can't really prove either side of those. But I think, it's interesting because Muslims do believe in Jesus, and they do believe in about 80% of what we believe about Jesus, right?
Yes.
And so I think that's really interesting. They believe, they believe he was without sin. Obviously, they believed he was real and lived in Israel at the time, and performed miracles and spoke truths. But they believe he never died, and he was just one more prophet. He was one of the best prophets, but he was just one more guy, and we got to keep going, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's the main take. That's the main, branching off point, is what I would say. If Christ's work is finished, like we believe, then why would we need more prophets to keep declaring us stuff?
It's a good point. It's a good point.
Yeah. And I think that's where we kind of branch off. I don't really trust anyone that says we have prophets or popes or new religious revelations after, 30 AD, because what is there left to reveal, right?
Hey man, I totally saw the gold plates.
that would be Joseph Smith and the gold plates.
Yeah, I'm referring to that, of course, because of my trip out to Utah and getting to see basically Salt Lake City, Mormon Central.
Just to Corey's point, you probably have to extend that a little bit, probably up until about 65 AD, which is when Paul finished writing, his letters. So it doesn't end quite at 30, but I get your point.
Yeah. Well, that was him just explaining to us what Jesus revealed. It wasn't like he was making new truth, right?
Correct. He was.
I have a new revelation. He was just explaining revelation. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough.
He was like Revelation 2.0. Was Jesus a lie?
This time it's personal.
Amos, what about you? With Islam, have you had any exposure to Islam? Why is it that you may disagree with Islam? And for anybody listening, we are completely respectful to our Muslim brothers.
Yeah.
We've had Abu.
I was going to point out. Yeah, we have Abu American here, but actually in my community college, my best friend was literally named Muhammad, and he was a Shia Muslim from Iran. Yeah.
Yeah. One of my best friends in school was Amir. And I used to steal cheese sandwiches off of him. His mom used to make these great cheese sandwiches and stuff like that. So, it's just we have a different a different faith tradition. We're just saying this is our personal beliefs. We're not trying to disrespect anybody's religion. So, Amos, your thoughts on Islam?
Without disrespecting Muslims at all, Mia Khalifa.
Don't say that while I'm trying to have a drink. Oh man, this stream is gonna be killed.
Everyone's gonna be like, "What did that good little Christian boy say in that stream?"
Yeah.
Dude, she's not even hot. That's the worst part.
Oh, I
don't know how she got work. I don't even know how she got work.
I know. I just figured, since we're talking about respecting the religion.
Yeah, nice way to respect the religion there, Amos.
No, that's the thing is, I think my personal experiences with the religion.
Very personal.
Yeah, very.
Somebody give him lube.
There's definitely a hands-on ministry approach here.
Somebody get the anointing oil.
I took. I went. Okay. So many comments.
Do you need a minute, Amos?
No. In terms of personal experiences with Muslims and such, I never really had any. Yeah, no.
Get out there more.
I remember. I mean, it's funny that Corey brings up community college. I remember when I was in community college. I was in the same class as a guy who was the president of, I think, like the Muslim student organization or something, kind of like the Muslim student group in the school. And I was like, but of course that was a whole thing of like back when there was just before connections of those types of student organizations and certain terroristic groups were found to be connected, but that's a whole other thing. Yeah. No, so he was there, and I think I don't remember really talking to the guy. And even in the school that I went to, like high school and such, it was, white suburban neighborhood. So I don't think I've ever encountered a Muslim.
What was there any other faith that you did encounter and maybe have a little insight in then?
The only religion that I would have had much encounter with would be honestly just Catholicism. All right. Well, we'll get into the Christian sphere in a minute.
Yeah, there's a lot of middle class white women that love Buddhism and yoga, so I assumed you found some of that. But
no, because
that's in hippie Colorado, not in Minnesota.
Yeah, in Minnesota.
I thought it was just a mob thing in general.
Yeah, in suburban Minnesota, you wouldn't even get that. You would even among your suburban white moms, they'd probably be just like casual Christian types. Go to church, go to Easter.
Cultural Christian, because you're supposed to.
Yeah, you go to you go to your Christmas and Easter services, and you're good. You get a message, but it's really just to kind of, if anything, I kind of look at it as like people trying to satisfy their conscience, kind of like I did my duty and did my thing because I went to church as a kid or whatever, and that's that. Yeah, I guess I would have been, in terms of religious exposure, fairly sheltered, I guess, in that sense, except just Buddhism when I was in Taiwan. I know I kind of would make a bit of fun of the fact when kids at my school who were essentially aspiring Catholics, growing up being Catholic, they had to go to becoming a Catholic. I guess in some churches is like a whole process. There's certain religious studies and stuff they attend. So they'd say, Tuesday or whatever day of the week, they say, yeah, we have religion. that's what it was. It was called religious studies. But then I sat there and I was like, what religion? Just the one? Which is what it was.
But yeah.
But yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, we'll get into Catholicism. We'll get it. Just personally for me, I haven't read the Quran in quite a while. And as I say, I had some very interesting discussions early on because I was all into the apologetics back in the day and stuff like that. With Islam, again, I know God can use anything, so I'm not trying to knock people's faith or anything like that. A couple of the claims that were made in the Quran, I clearly had an issue with. Just morally speaking, the Bible, God is a God of love, and He loves everybody. He loves the sinner. He loves the saint. This. But in the Quran, Allah does not love a lot of people. He does not love sinners. He does not love, the disobedient. And I was kind of like, that's
There's almost a selfish will to Allah, isn't there? Like a kind of like wills.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing. But just in terms of the depiction of God, it's morally inferior, in my opinion. As well as in one of the surahs, I can't remember which one it is, Allah does not understand what the Trinity is. He says it's God, Mary, and Jesus. That I have issue with. Obviously, that's not the understanding of the Trinity.
Sounds like a bad threesome.
I don't know. Between Mia Khalifa and your threesome talk, I think you need some alone time, Amos.
Oh yeah. I did want to point out though, Brooke, there are some Old Testament quotes that do say God hates specific people too. So.
Right, he said like he hates Esau, but it is metaphorical. It's not literal Esau.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think the verse I'm thinking of, it says like, here's 6 things God hates, and half of them are behaviors, and half of them are specific people doing those behaviors.
Right.
So it's actually attributing the hate to the person.
Right. Yeah. Fair. But it's based on their action. It's not just out of the whole thing. But no, I in that respect, the New Testament kind of gives me an out in that respect, because we know in that is where we get the full revelation of the whole thing. Also, in the discussions I had with a lot of Muslims, it just became very circular. And a lot of people, like, for instance, we're not even supposed to have the Quran, right? So a lot of people kind of, they just believe that the Quran was just written perfectly and, it's the same text that Muhammad wrote and stuff. No, that's historically inaccurate. In fact, if you read the hadith and the oral traditions, they were never supposed to write it down at all. It was supposed to be oral tradition only. But now they've written it down. I can't remember in which dynasty it was. There were other versions of it that were burned, and they basically destroyed some other documents and basically said, this is going to be what we have now.
Similar to the Bible, isn't it?
No, exactly. I have no problem with that because the Bible went through a very similar thing, right? But they don't even want to acknowledge that history. They just say, well, this is the direct revelation that we received from the beginning. And those type of claims in face of clear historical inaccurate, evidence, I have a problem with that kind of mindset. And that's a large reason why, I'm not saying God can't use Islam. Clearly he can, but that's for me, it wasn't something satisfactory. So with that said, let's maybe delve a little bit into the Christian side of the equation and why it is that we don't necessarily hold certain views. And obviously the big one seems to be Catholic. And I feel very bad because our brother Bobby is not here to kind of defend, I don't like pissing on people's stuff and there's nobody to kind of talk back on it, but we're just having a candid discussion. Why are none of us here Catholic?
Okay.
CONK, I'll start with you.
Okay. I don't know. I don't want to necessarily point out specific doctrines I hate or anything like that.
Sure.
But, there's obviously there's a gray area in between Christian and non-Christian that's sometimes hard to declare, because I've heard it both ways. Like when I worked at the Hispanic Pentecostal church in Colorado, they said Catholics were not Christians and they would die on that hill. Right. But there's a lot of people, it's like, oh, it's just another, essentially, but you have the opposite side where Catholicism's Christianity is just another denomination, right?
Right.
I think it's a gray area in the middle. Because to me, all of my qualifications, and I think you talked about it before, is like the absolute bare essentials of Christianity is Jesus was God and died for all sin, and pretty much that's it. Like,
you believe those things, yes.
yeah, and I always point to the thief on the cross is the bare minimum requirement for Christianity, right? The thief on the cross basically acknowledged Jesus. Jesus said, okay, you'll be with me in paradise. You know, they didn't ask if he spoke in tongues or prayed to saints or was pre-trib or post-trib or what's his thoughts on Calvinism versus Arminianism. All
Did he
that's
put his
irrelevant,
head down
right?
and raise up his hand to witness Jesus with the pastor?
Yeah,
While the
he
music
didn't
was playing?
yeah, he didn't get baptized. You know what I mean? He didn't do all this other stuff that we could confirm or deny. I did have somebody once try to argue that he did get baptized, and that was hilarious. They said that the Romans took him down to baptize him and then put him back up because baptism was so essential to that Christian. They're like, they didn't write it down, but it had to have happened because Jesus wouldn't take you to paradise unless you were baptized. Man, they went that far that he was baptized off screen.
All that work just to kill someone. All right, we're going to take him off this cross.
I guess if you really need to be baptized.
You take this flailing body and just dunk it in some water.
Right.
That's crazy.
Throw it back up, nailing some new holes in the hands and feet. What?
It's like somebody tied to like the electric chair saying, wait, I didn't take communion yet. All right, untie him, get him his stuff.
No, he gets fried. And then they're like, all right, let's just force feed his dead body communion.
Just poke it in there.
You know, he wants it. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of that, Mormons believe in post-dead baptism, which is really interesting. But to me, yeah, Catholicism in general, though, is in that gray area because they don't necessarily deny that. Like, if you ask them, do you believe Jesus Christ was God and died for all your sins? They say yes. But I think some of the doctrines muddy the water a bit, is how I would put it. Is that essentially true or not? So, yeah, it's a very gray area because they definitely say they believe that. But I think some of the doctrines, and also I would say there's also a difference between Catholicism and Catholics, right?
Right.
Catholicism doctrine could not be, good, but there are some Catholics that don't practice that part, but still call themselves Catholics. Does that make sense?
Would you say the requirement of like becoming a Christian is sort of enough in the Family Guy interpretation of it? Do you remember when
I don't know that one.
when they storm Bin Laden's hideout and he's got like a bunch of sniper rifles in his face and he says, "I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior," and all of a sudden he like poof appears in heaven and he goes, "Yes." Wait.
Maybe, who knows, right?
There was a scene where Brian and Stewie are exploring different religions, and Brian says, "Yeah, Christians pretty much believe as long as you accept Jesus as your Lord and Savior, no matter what, you'll go to heaven." And then all of a sudden it's a cutaway to a scene where they break into Bin Laden's hideout, and he goes, "I accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior," as all the guns pointed in his face, and then he just wakes up in heaven.
I mean, kind of, right? I mean, to that, they're kind of picking on the sinner's prayer, which I think is not real, right? Where you have to go bow at the altar and say these 5 sentences and then you're saved. Like,
yeah, it's really just the sinner's prayer is almost like the it's a I guess an interpolation. It would be like almost like an interpolation of theology to an understanding of how Christian comes to be. So it's almost like I think like the sinner's prayer is kind of like being read your Miranda rights. Because it's through the interpretation of the Constitution, you're granted these rights.
You have the right to remain holy. Everything you say and do from now on will be forgiven by Jesus.
Exactly. So, but you get what I'm saying is like through Supreme Court and laws and amendments and such, you have this sort of process that has created things like you're given proper representation in the justice system. You're get read these rights to understand, so nothing is sort of lost. Whereas with this, it's like we've taken theology and we've sort of created this sort of, we've woven this prayer. Oh, this is a prayer that takes into account all these ideas and beliefs of how to become a Christian comes to be. So we kind of think like we've interpreted to say like, oh, this is what this is then. Like the sinner's prayer is biblical because we've woven all this theology as we interpret it to this. In the same way Miranda rights are like, we've woven this understanding of how the Constitution applies to people. Therefore, this is how we have to read it to them.
Possibly. We'll get to the sinner
stretch.
Sorry. Yeah. I mean, I think the sinner's prayer was Charles Finney. He came up with it, and it's basically a reading out of Romans 10. Confess with your mouth the Lord Jesus Christ, and you shall be saved. And that is kind of the basis. It was counteracting Calvinism, where people would just sit around praying to be saved. And he was like, no, you could actually make a declaration. So there's something that came about in the 1800s with Charles Finney.
But again, that's an interpretation of scripture. And
I'm not disputing that. But let's keep it on the topic here with the Catholics. And I mean, Corey, you wanted to add anything else in terms of why you personally, was there one thing that personally did not convince you to become a Catholic?
Well, I mean, the big one to me is having a pope is silly.
Right.
You know, I think it's pretty cut and dry in scripture that we have a universal priesthood and we're all equal under Christ. So still trying to make a new king or ruler, but now it's a Christian version. Like, that doesn't make sense to me. Right. So that's my main thing, is the fact that you're saying one guy has a different special connection than the rest of the world. We should listen to him on almost equal terms of God. That doesn't make sense to me. That's dumb.
Fair enough.
Yeah. I have a lot more, but to me, that's one of the big ones, is what's a pope?
Welcome to Eastern Orthodoxy.
Yeah.
Corey just shows up at the Vatican. Dumb.
Amos, what about you? In terms of why are you not a Catholic? Is there something that you've experienced or a lack of experience? Maybe you should be Catholic. What are your views?
I mean, it's got to be. It has to be all the kneeling.
All those pews.
They don't even give out.
No. I think it has to do with the priests telling me to kneel all the time. Just kidding.
What age are you when this
Spicy.
I think I heard that there was a joke that was, and this is, guys, I have nothing against Catholics. This is all just good fun. I mean, with all the comments,
my channel is going to be struck down any minute now.
No, I think someone had said like, Catholics are just confusing. It's like stand up, kneel, stand up and kneel. He's like, I wish the priest would just choose a position already. I was like, oh geez. I actually do appreciate a lot of, I say customs, but practices that the Catholic Church has. There's a lot of like very repetitive, I think, kind of things they do in Mass and such that some people can kind of get lost in to think, oh, this is just, they think it's all religion. And I mean, when I say religion in terms of like sort of the bad way of religion, like obligatory just practices and things you do to kind of fulfill your conscience, not like spiritual religion, like actual pursuit and fulfillment that you get from what you're doing. And I've seen like some of these traditions and things they do that to be like almost like with all the exposure to just the different theology and discussions and beliefs that we've had, like while when we were ministers, it kind of draws me back to like have an appreciation for certain things. So like, I think, the few times that I went in the last few years to Mass, I would have like just I could somehow find a bit of like meaning or sort of, if you want to say, fulfillment in the prayers and just the things they do. It's very ominous, like hearing a bunch of people say this one prayer in unison. And some people think, oh,
ominous.
but then like over time, I kind of came to like, no, there's like something about this, like the meaning in what they're saying, the sort of the depth of what they're trying to get to. Like, it's not like a, saying like, reciting something. It was actually like people in there that actually feel like I'm saying this prayer. This means something to me. This brings them something, I guess. It's kind of like because I mean, just with the kind of where we were with the whole thing with grace and sort of the removal of the need of works. Well, here we are, sort of so much grace that we don't have to do anything. But then I'm kind of like, well, I like to do something. So then it's sort of almost like a pendulum swinging. I kind of swing towards like what is considered to be the very religious side of Catholicism. It's like I can actually find like almost a new sense of being spiritual in sort of what people might consider the more mundane practices that they would do, like the rosary, certain prayers they do. At one point in high school, I did the rosary. Like I did like 100 Hail Marys with some classmates. And I went home and I told my parents this. They're like, "Why'd you do that? That doesn't do anything." I thought, well, I just felt like doing it. After a point, I definitely felt a little like, okay, this is getting
100 is a lot, man. I don't know what sin you committed with Mia Khalifa to warrant 100 Hail Marys.
God damn it, dude. No,
I think that's
like,
100 sets of 100 for that one.
There was this belief, like if you said a certain amount of certain kind of prayers, like it was their way of sort of pleading with God for certain things. They say pleading, we might saying like, in a way, Christians who pray for certain things is almost kind of a plea as well.
Yeah, it's a petition, sure.
Yeah. So I kind of was like, out of respect for the person we were praying for, I was like, I'll do this. We were praying for someone in my class who had like a really traumatic head injury. Now she later died, but it was like this whole sort of the meaning of it, and like a lot of people got together and did this thing, and there I was among maybe like one or two, maybe it was just me. I was probably the only non-Catholic in that room.
Right.
But it was this whole thing, and I did it. But then my parents were like, "Oh, why'd you do that? That doesn't do anything. You should just like do this other thing." And I thought, well, I mean, does it really matter that much? If your heart is in it, does it make that big of a difference? Like, can't God move through, hundreds and hundreds of Hail Marys?
Yeah, they turned into junk mail at some point, right?
Yeah, you would think between that and the Lord's Prayer, but we'll see.
I'm just imagining now Bruce Almighty when he gets all the emails.
All the prayers.
He gets one and then the other 99 go to the junk bin. Yeah. We get it. Duplicate.
Hey, is this spam?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it is
reported for phishing.
Your prayers are phishing.
He's trying to get something out of me.
Oh man, it's that Nigerian prince again trying to email me.
Dear God, I am a Nigerian prince.
You have an inheritance. I mean, just to kind of, I guess, round out that conversation and the topic. As I say, I've been the reason I used to go to a Catholic church was to meet girls because of First Communion and was it confirmation? I think confirmation was the one for the teenagers.
You were a teenager as well, right?
I was a teenager at the time. Yes, I wasn't a fucking grown man going to like pimp little girls. No, you idiot.
Well, I mean, I missed out on that. I was born an adult in a lab. So.
I was a teenager at the time, and I actually had a conversion experience not long after I was just going there for the girls, and I started to give the priest and other people a lot of shit because I actually started reading the Bible and kind of disagreeing with a lot of stuff. But I agree with you, Amos, especially in the Protestant religion, it's not very liturgical. There's not a lot of symbolism. There's not a lot of nobody's wearing the outfits. These are practices that the church has been doing for at least 2,000 years. And while in and of itself, it really does not have significance, there is something about tapping into something that's been a tradition for 2,000 years. Which is probably why I kind of gravitated more to the Eastern Orthodox side, where, yeah, they do a lot of that liturgical stuff. They still, they dress, they do the incense, they do the prayers. They have the saints, not to the level of the Catholics. But I mean, at the same time, they're very realistic about it, that look, the whole center point of this thing is Christ. A very simple thing in the Eastern Orthodox Church, the priests and everybody else is actually facing away from the crowd because they see their duty as like leading the people to God. Like, here are your people. So they don't actually face the crowd to do this, do the stuff. And it's a simple tradition, thousands of years old. The Catholics did away with it. Eastern Orthodox stuck with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It doesn't hurt anybody at the end of the day. But yeah, if you understand the grace and the freedom that you're in, you get to do the good works. You get to perform good things. In fact, a guest that Corey and I had on, our friend Stephen, he talked about that as well in his journey. He's kind of adopted a couple of the liturgical aspects of Christianity that I think some of that tradition is kind of missing in Protestantism, where Protestantism has its strengths in terms of scripture. You kind of threw some of the good stuff out as well, the wine and other things, But yeah, for me, I would agree with Corey in the sense the Pope, the papacy, the Pope is definitely a sticking point. The infallibility when he sits in the Holy See, where whatever he declares basically becomes the voice of God. I think I can't agree with that. The assumption of Mary into heaven, which is the only extra biblical statement that the Catholic Church has basically come out with, basically that she was also assumed into the clouds and, she took her body with her. I have a problem with that. They made a declaration that Mary also ascended into heaven, and they declared it from the Holy See. And it's kind of like, okay, you're really pushing it at this point. So I would have an issue with that and how they're able to basically change a lot of the historical understanding of Christianity. Around I think 1022, there was actually a book put out by the Eastern Church saying these are all of the doctrinal changes that the Catholic Church has had since the early church to now. And it's like a 600-page volume. Far less for where we are now. Yeah. They've really come away. And I think for me, that's my biggest problem. If you have a system that is based more upon the man rather than the traditions or the scriptures, and he has supersedence power to change those meanings, you're not on solid ground. That's my biggest issue.
After as the popes sort of leave office, I guess, the canonization process.
I mean, there's a lot of problems within Catholicism in terms of how they canonize saints.
It's like, whereas in the Bible, there's talk of all of us being the saints.
All of us are saints. Yeah, every believer is a saint. There's another very funny thing, because again, the Catholics believe you're baptized into salvation. So they do infant baptism, but they're not really part of the church until they do their first communion, which is when they're like 6 or 7. So theologically, I don't understand how that works.
So technically, did Jesus lie to the thief on the cross?
Exactly, right? It's like...
Or did they take him down and baptize him?
Yeah. So
can you put that vinegar swab over my head and count it as baptism?
I have an issue that the children are not fully participating in the church services. They're in some odd category, which I don't understand. So yeah, those kind of problems I definitely have issue with. And the whole, I mean, there really shouldn't be a piety and a laity to begin with, right? We're kind of like, we're all on the same level. I mean, this is even an issue I have with the Orthodox Church. They still see themselves as, separate from the people. And I don't, Jesus clearly wasn't separate from the people. So that's kind of it. I don't know if either of you had experience with Orthodoxy and if there's anything you disagree with. I don't know. Corey, have you had any experience?
I had a friend named Phil in community college. That's where you meet everybody, right? It's the hip and happening place. And he was Greek Orthodox. I didn't go to their church, but I did meet the priest that he associated with, kind of thing. And That's pretty much it. But a little smidge, little crumb of Orthodoxy, I guess, because he went to a Greek Orthodox church and I met the guy. But that's about it.
Yeah,
and Fedor Emelianenko, the MMA fighter, is hardcore Russian Orthodox.
Yeah, Russian Orthodox.
And I watched some of his documentaries in his life, and he's diehard, like ride or die Russian Orthodox not Catholic. I don't know why I was saying that.
Yeah, Orthodox religion. Yeah.
But that's not it. So yeah, I've seen liturgical processes and some of the stuff they do, but like what they believe in, not, I don't know. It's kind of irrelevant to me. I don't care that much because I'm kind of on the opposite side, right? I don't give two shits about robes or clothes or those kinds of traditions. To me, they're more annoying than they are helpful. But
but again, that is the beauty of Christianity, that you don't have to adopt it. You know, it's you can if you want, sort of thing.
Yeah.
What about you, Amos? And any exposure to Orthodoxy?
I did a wedding with an Orthodox ritual in it.
Really? That's interesting.
It was the first wedding I did. I don't know if I told you.
Oh, I didn't know that there was an Orthodox aspect to it.
Well, it was so to the bride, for her, it was like a non. For her, she considered it like a pagan thing, but its origins was from the Orthodox Church. So it was the what is it, the rope thing, where they sort of like they use the cords to sort of bring together
the hands.
Yeah. So there'd be one from the family, from her family, one from his family, and then one to kind of bring them together. So we kind of did this whole thing of deciding like how I'm going to do this.
Congratulations, you're now being held captive in your room.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
good luck.
The
symbolism of how much you hate marriage.
One from the tax man, you know.
Gotta have state representation.
But you know, don't look at the secret NSA camera that I'm putting in this cord. Tie that on. No, yeah. So I did that whole thing, and it was funny. So like she wanted this sort of what she considered to be a pagan ritual, because she was actually Wiccan, and he was an atheist. So it's kind of like this, like, okay.
I guess that works.
Well, they borrow from us all the time, like the upside down cross, right?
Yeah.
That should be like Christian respect, and now it's like
I started getting a pouch of like salt out, and I was making like a pentagram. No, I'm just kidding.
For the Lord, though. For the Lord.
Yeah. But it really was gunpowder, so when I lit it, there was like this fiery. No. Anyways, no. So I mean, that was really it for me. I mean, I know that during our time, like Brook and my time, you know, in ministry and such, we kind of came to, I think, some of our beliefs, we were kind of verging on like some of the more orthodox type of, you know, views. I remember there was a conversation with our friend Josh Tungle, and I think it was someone. This was a very open conversation, I remember. So we were out like doing like our street ministry stuff or something, and it was Josh, and there was like some. I think I could tell this story.
It's a long time ago. I think it's all right.
Thomas Fisher.
You're past the statute of limitations. You're good.
Oh yeah, I remember Thomas.
Yeah, so there was like this. I mean, and of course with their beliefs and everything, it was like two ends of the spectrum.
Yeah, you best explain that for people a little bit, because I know Corey isn't familiar with these guys.
So Josh Tunga was this guy that we knew. He was in the Philippines, and he talked a lot about God's grace, God's love, and he was kind of getting into sort of the more like sort of orthodoxy type of views of the church now. Not so much nowadays, but he would just really kind of get into like the more what some people would kind of consider kind of like, I guess essentially just like a more I don't know, hippie Jesus. I don't even know how to describe that. Like,
he was an early he was an early universalist, but didn't want to admit it. That's basically
yeah. I mean, we called it what, hopeful universalism.
Hopeful universalism was our way of checking it.
And then you had our friend Thomas Fisher over here, who was kind of the more really getting into kind of the more fundamentalist side.
Yeah, he was an evangelical fundamentalist, so like signs and wonders, but literalist.
Yeah, he would go out there and do the, kind of talk about the same, like, signs and wonders, faith healing stuff that we were into, but then he would like really, apply the hard, like, essentially what you would kind of say, like the hard R view of hell. Like, just really like, you got to believe this because, I mean, he would get into, demons and all this stuff. But anyway, so the two of them are having this conversation, and I forget exactly where it was, but basically, like, here's Josh talking about like perichoresis.
Yeah.
And he's like describing this again. This is, this Eastern Orthodox view and all this stuff. And I'm sitting here like, you're completely like underselling it. He has no idea that you're basically like talking about this very essentially what some would consider like a controversial view.
Yes.
Sort of like the embodiment, like the incarnation and sort of the connection between mankind and God.
Yes.
So it's for people who've seen this, like people have seen kind of the symbol of the Trinity. So it's kind of this like, I don't know exactly. Oh, you have it there. Yeah. So you have the Trinity, but there's a circle that's sort of woven into the Trinity.
Wait, we're looking at the dishwasher, right?
No, you're looking at this thing right here.
Oh,
it's upside down.
You don't have a holy dishwasher?
No, I wish I did. She'd be hot.
but yeah, you see this, you see the Trinity, but you also see the circle in the middle of it, and the circle is supposed to represent like humanity, or mankind, basically.
Mankind, yeah.
Yeah, mankind is woven into the Trinity, so it's got I think some people took that to be like, not the quadrant, but the four parts of God. It's like no, it's all of God is still, there's still the Trinity, three persons in one God, but humanity is sort of intertwined in that because we were brought in through Christ.
Yes.
Like by not only sort of bearing the sin, through his resurrection, we were sort of risen again with him to be with God. So he's like describing that. He's here. It's just some Eastern Orthodox view.
I mean, that's some very high theology for some of our listeners. If you've never heard this, don't worry if you don't get it. It's not essential.
High theology, and also, no, I'm just kidding.
yeah, it's some high.
Gets a little high too, but it was just funny, like seeing the because I was like, oh, I didn't know it was an Eastern Orthodox view. Like, I'm just sitting here like, because it was mainly from you, Brook, that I like talk about these things, think about these things. That sort of changed my views, but. Here I am hearing like, there's Josh Tungle and there's Thomas Fisher like having this conversation. I'm like, what the heck's going on here? Like, it'd be kind of like me, if I explained like
it would be like John Piper and Rob Bell having a conversation. I think that's probably the best analogy.
And he tried explaining in a very basic way about the premise of his book, Love Wins.
Yes, that's the same level.
Yeah. God loves us and all this. Yeah. Whereas, like, the extent of that and sort of the logical conclusion of what that means would be kind of like he wouldn't get into just for the sake of like having a good conversation, not ruining it.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. Was the two of them are like having this Eastern Orthodox. Oh, that's really interesting. Whereas it's like. That means all sorts of stuff that can, be in conflict with what you believe, essentially. But yeah, that was kind of that whole thing.
I'm for some people. Let me just kind of explain that there are two ways of approaching scripture. One is a Greco-Roman approach, and then there is a Jewish approach. And the Greco-Roman is very much there's a separation. So there's light and there's darkness, but the Jewish interpretation is no. The light is in the darkness. God is all and encompassing. So the Roman view tends to see like, there's a devil who's kind of has independent existence. There's a hell that's burning. God is over here, and there's a lot of separation. There's no common thread that comes between everything. The Jewish view is the complete opposite, where God is the encompassing of all existence. He's holding everything together, and the light shines even in the darkness. So that it's a subtle difference, but that it is how you read the scripture. If you see somebody is cast out, the Greco view will basically say, well, they've been cut off from God. But in the Jewish view, that's impossible because God holds all things together. Cast out would mean something different.
If anything, for Christians who want to freak out, or just to kind of get a little off track, as I do.
Yeah, I'm going to open it up to the guys in a minute.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But well, I don't know if Corey, if you know a little bit about like kind of the idea of, just because I like talking about this, my little excuse. So kind of like how the gods operate in D&D.
Yeah,
Like,
for the most part, like specifically warlocks, right?
But well, yeah, they have their patrons, but like the gods in D&D reside on planes. Like there's no real gods that sort of reside in what's called the prime material plane, which is like where Earth and all that stuff is.
Yeah, magic is similar, but
right. So the thing is with that is Christians almost view like, God is in heaven, so like heaven is like a plane, and then the devil is in hell, which is like another plane. And it's funny, D&D has planes that are like, there's heavenly planes, and then there's like sort of these hellish planes.
Yeah, is it also similar like Asgard and Midgard?
There's some of that. I mean, it depends.
Realms.
Yeah, and it depends upon it depends upon how you what sort of the cosmology you would use in like your D&D campaign. But it's like Christians almost do that. So it's like when you pray to sort of for God to come down. It's funny. There's an ability that cleric has called divine intervention. You roll a dice to determine if your God will intervene in a certain moment. There's like a percentage and all this stuff. And that's like when Christians, they'll pray for hours and hours and hours for God to move and do all this stuff. And it's like, whereas sort of like Brook was kind of saying, like with the sort of Jewish understanding and even just the Eastern Orthodox view is sort of like, well, there's no like separate, like it's all, oops, not to hit my mic there. It's all woven together.
Mic abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. It's all woven together, with this view of like, God and like, light and darkness are like coexisting because it's, just not just because of the theology, I think even just in the physical sense, like darkness doesn't overcome light. You just turn on a light. I think what was it? Some friends of ours, Brook, who talked about like people will scream at the light or scream at the darkness or curse the darkness when they don't even know just to turn on a light.
Right. Who was I can't remember the details of that.
Well, those are friends over at
I think that was Carrot Top.
Carrot Top said that? Yeah, it sounds
that sounds up his alley.
But it was something, it was just the idea, the difference between like sort of cursing the darkness versus just
turning on that. Yeah, I think it was like a demonology question, and they're like, fight the devil, beat the darkness, and we're kind of like, no, just turn on the light. Don't shadow box yourself with anything.
Yeah,
just tell me how to live my life. I'll punch myself.
But it's a sort of idea, sort of the equal footing that God and the devil have, and in a sense, like I like the narrative side of it. I like stories that are, the good and evil. Like we like that, but in terms of the theology and sort of the view of God and such, it can be very contradictory and just theologically it kind of falls apart when you question certain things. Like, oh, so you believe like the devil is equal and opposite to God? Well, no.
They may not admit that, but it's true in practice in a lot of Protestant churches. Yeah. They'll never admit it, but
there's this place you go to where God doesn't exist.
We do have Heather waiting in the back there, so
yes,
let's bring her on.
I did want to say though, real quick, that
what she got there?
Martha Stewart?
I was going to say real quick, when you explained the Greco-Roman view, I was very upset it didn't have any grappling or body slams. I just want to say that.
Heather, welcome to the party. Thanks for joining us. I see you brought your patron saint with you.
Truly. I had to do a tease. I've been using this very religiously.
Fantastic.
I just wanted to say that, this was a long time ago, obviously. But when I was in college, I took a world religions class, and because I was interested, and when reading parts of, is it the Siddhartha for the Buddhists? The
way or whatever.
Part of the Quran, and comparing it to my what seemed very strict but yet limited in actual information religious Christian background, I found so many similarities. And I just thought that it was really interesting how similar a lot of the religions were. And, you know, I just didn't understand why people were so vigilant about theirs being right when there was no way to prove it. That's all.
Yeah. I think why a lot of, especially the whole Protestant evangelical side, is so adamant is because they believe hell is real and knocking on the door, right? So even though you might not have all the proof, there's a lot of skin in the game, right? And so if you're in a place that believes like people are lost and are going to hell, like every second people are dying and going to hell, then that kind of gives you your sense of urgency that you need to tell people, right? And I think that's where a lot of it comes from. And then there's also some ego involved as well. Like, if you ever see those atheism versus Christian debates,
Yes.
Yeah.
those are always a train wreck because it always devolves into like really weird specific semantics and absurd thought processes and all this kind of stuff. Actually, I watched one yesterday because I got bored, and it was so stupid. Like, not only was it stupid as a debate, but it's stupid because afterwards the Christian guy was like, man, I really hope he sees the light. I hope I got through to him. No, you guys just yelled at each other for 2.5 hours on YouTube. Like, nothing happened. If anything, he hates Christianity more.
I know you guys make fun of Jordan Peterson, but I enjoyed his debate with, was it with Sam Harris? And I thought that was interesting. It gave some different perspectives on things. And, I know,
Excuse me.
I know plenty of Christians who are jerks, and I know atheists who are jerks. And I know plenty of them who are nice people as well on, in all beliefs or non-beliefs. And it's like, just try not to be a jerk.
Don't be a dick.
Yeah. Well, it is in our human nature to be
And
jerks.
follow this
The patron saint.
religiously. She knows what she's doing.
Is there a chapter in there about how to shank people in prison? I was always wondering that.
No.
Oh, okay.
She was
She was under house arrest. She never made it to prison.
She was in prison.
Yeah.
She was in prison. Oh, okay.
She was. And one of her jailmates made her a poncho that she wore when she was released.
What about
fantastic?
Does she have like a special recipe for brownies from Snoop Dogg in there?
This is an older book. You forget how much older than I am, Amos. This is a much older book, but it's very reliable, and I love cooking in my new kitchen so much. I can't even say. It's such a treat. But I do love this show. It's nice to have something to look forward to on a Sunday morning.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much. Thanks for joining us. Take care.
Have a good weekend.
You too.
I like that. The patron saint of what is that? Home decor is Martha Stewart.
Yeah.
What was that magazine again? Homemaker?
Home and Garden or something?
Homewrecker.
Homewrecker. Home and Garden. Yeah. It's like a whole religion.
So very briefly, would you all both still consider yourself to be Protestant? Because we got about 7 minutes here where we don't have anybody else coming in. So maybe we could pick on the evangelicals a little bit. Why we're not necessarily evangelical? That's always fun.
Because they're just Protestant and they don't want to admit it. It's cool and hip to be non-denominational.
I mean, okay, just for my sake, because I'm a bit not under. I don't quite know the exact. What are the exact differences? Like the main differences between evangelicals and overall Protestantism?
The evangelicals would be the prayer of salvation. The Protestant church is a much bigger. Obviously, you got Church of England, you got Lutheran, you got some of the old liturgy. So they've kept a lot of the old liturgy.
So you could say all evangelicals are Protestants. Not all Protestants are evangelicals.
Correct.
Yeah. It's essentially
it's like non-denominational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. One comedian said non-denominationals are basically just Baptists with a cool website.
Yeah. I did go to a non-denominational church that was actually affiliated with Assemblies of God, and I worked there, which is interesting. But
did you work at the Assemblies of God church?
Two of them.
Did you have to sign the tenets every year? Like the was it the 14 beliefs of the Assemblies of God? Did you have to do that?
Yeah, and I went to college for a year, and I lied on all of it. So I don't give a shit. I was just lying about everything. I don't believe anything you guys do, but it's cool.
Yeah, I think a large part of why the rapture theology has basically become as popular as it is because of the Assemblies of God. They put that as one of the tenets, I think, like the rapture is coming soon or something.
Yeah, and I got into arguments with my professors all the time. It was online school, but yeah, they're like, all doctrines are equally important and hills to die on, and I was telling them that's stupid. Like, you're going to die on the hill of pre-trib versus post-trib. It didn't even happen. It's not even happening right now. Like, who?
Exactly.
I mean,
who knows?
Left Behind book was kind of okay.
Sorry, what was that?
I was going to say the Left Behind book series was, regardless of your theological concerns with it, not a badly written story, I think, for the most part.
No, I've went out of my way to never watch them, so I'm pretty proud of that.
No, not watch them. Read the book.
There's a book series.
Either.
And I never read those. But I mean, to add to Corey's point about why the Protestants, and I think it is only prevalent in the Protestant movement. The infernalist hell, I believe, is only seen in the Protestant movement as strongly as it is, as well as rapture theology. So the Catholics are basically postmillennialist. Eastern Orthodox, they don't really hold a position, but it's mostly postmillennial. The evangelicals and the Protestants are the only ones that hold an infernalist view of hell and the rapture theology, which are two things there's an urgency to, which will promote people to go out and preach.
Mm-hmm.
Is there like a breakdown of the view of hell between like different regions of the world?
Different regions of the, well, I mean, it's only 3, possibly 4 views. So
right. Because I'm just thinking of like, it's interesting how like there's the Bible Belt in the U.S. and that's kind of like where a lot of the infernalism, and I'm just like, man, how do you sell such an idea in like the hotter part of the country?
I was born there.
How do you really get people to believe in hell as a Texan? It
reminds me, I saw a joke the other day. It says, whenever you say it's hot out, somebody from Arizona will appear out of nowhere and say, you haven't felt heat yet. Happens every time.
I mean, it's like the Texans would, you think it's hot now. This is just a dry heat. In hell, there's humidity. So how do they sell it in Florida?
Florida's pretty bad. I've been to Florida.
How do they sell it in Florida? They're like, well, imagine all this. But, I mean, what would make Florida worse?
The humidity is really bad.
I don't know. I think it's at cap,
That's possible.
Of misery.
But I would say...
you have to go to a convention in Orlando.
Oh, no.
All right, so we're going to have some quick final thoughts. But just on the issue of Protestantism... what was I going to say? Right. For me personally, why I'm not a Protestant, like a pure Protestant, is the inflexibility of doctrine, exactly what you were talking about, Corey, where you have to believe every little detail or else you're going to burn forever in eternal hell. And that just, clearly it didn't work for me. So that's why I'm not in that camp per se. Quickly from you guys, I guess, your comments on Protestantism and, kind of final thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I mean, before I think you asked what we consider ourselves.
Yes.
And I don't know. I think Sean McCraney, I always pitch him a lot, but he has a very interesting thing where he does the whole Christianarchy thing. It's like spiritual anarchy instead of like political anarchy, where faith is inherently subjective outside of those 1 or 2 essential truths. And his big thing is that the Protestant Reformation needs another 95 Theses on it. We need it. Yeah, he wants to be Martin Luther Part 2, right? That it's gone so off the deep end that we just need to do it again. And so
reel it back in.
Yeah, so he's not non-denominational. He's more anti-denominational, which I think sounds cooler. So I'm going to go with that one.
We
Awesome.
must not just be non-denominational. We must be actively anti-denominational.
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 And I practice it. I practice it hard.
I mean, is Christy Anarchy just a black flag with a cross on it?
Yeah, well, it's
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's literally the anarchy symbol, but they put a little C in it. It's pretty interesting. I can show it to you guys sometime. But
if you could pull up the website of your guy, maybe just post it in the chat if anybody's interested to see more, and I'll add it to the description below. Amos, where would you say you place yourself in the whole denominational camp?
I mean, I've stood with the view of what I would consider like. Like I had the conversation with someone the other day, and it's not to take away from basically the way I explained it to them was like the way I view God and Jesus and all this is like no, that probably gets a little too in the head, too heady, but I mean, I've kind of said at the beginning of when we started doing these shows was sort of like the Christian agnostic. So like I'll stick with a lot of this. You and I share a lot of the same views on God and Jesus and such, but I'm more. I would consider, I guess, in terms of the spectrum of belief, to be more agnostic, or even some have kind of said maybe I'm more of a deist, but it's like, you know, God exists, Jesus existed. In terms of the rest of the stuff,
who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I had a whole discussion about the existence of Jesus, and I'm not gonna drop that on everyone, but it's like, okay, we can sit there and talk about this, but at the same time, it's like I'm still going to kind of follow like a lot of the teachings of Jesus and sort of those views, and kind of integrate that into my own view.
Would you say it's kind of like think for yourself, but do what others do, kind of thing?
Yeah, I basically said like I would say I have Christian beliefs, but it doesn't it's not to the point that it would interfere or interfere with certain more rational reasoning side. Like I'm not gonna I'm not believing in as a guy I used to listen to, Curry Blake. I don't believe in a hairbrush demon. Like I'm not walking around the house and trying to find my hairbrush. Well, not that I would need one, but his idea of the hairbrush demon was, it's like demons are everywhere. So it's like, if I lost my hairbrush or my car keys, there's a demon involved. And it's like, no, I'm not sitting there I'm just like, no, I lost my keys, so they're somewhere.
You're not spiritualizing everything.
Yeah, I'm not super spiritualizing my life. So it's like, hey, if I get sick, I go to a doctor. If I get hurt, I do this. If I'm hungry, I eat. I'm not,
Yeah,
man, should not live by bread alone, and get real hungry, guys. It's like, no, there's a real world, but there is a spiritual sort of overlay to sort of how you can view the world, but it's not to sort of take you down this Gnostic view of separating from the physical realm.
Right.
So
yeah, that's a good way to kind of sum it up. I mean, just very briefly for me, I think I pull very much from the scriptural tradition of the Protestants. So how I approach scripture and, really trying to study it. I do like a lot of the history of both the Catholic and the Eastern Orthodox Church. Doesn't necessarily apply to my belief, although I do like to pull the mysticism. I do think Christianity is a mystical religion. I don't think a supernatural God will create a natural world for the natural to basically dictate how everything should be. So I'm definitely into the idea of theosis and men kind of ascending into, being sons of God in a sense. But yeah, I think there's good traditions. They're fun traditions within each of the different strains. Some things are done right. Some things are done wrong. It's not my place to say, but definitely enjoying the journey. So guys, any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
Mm.
Both of you guys twisted up your mouth at the same time.
Oh,
What it's meant to be. I had something to say a while ago, but it's gone. It's way gone.
We'll pick it up. We'll pick
It's
it up
out of
next week.
town. Yeah, it's like a
Next
midnight
week-
train going anywhere. Yeah.
I think where are we next week? We're on Amos's channel or back on yours, CONK?
it's my channel.
Your channel? Okay, you're right. Your
My
channel.
You go to your channel and you'll like it.
Exactly.
Any final thoughts, Amos? Or
No, wait, we already gave final thoughts.
okay, no.
Oh,
So we were saying where we were from in our faith. But guys, yes, definitely very interesting discussion. I'm sure we could have probably pulled up a lot of other religions. Anybody watching this in the future, you got comments, you got questions, put them in the comments below. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe this video, as well as subscribe to Amos, Corey, as well as a couple episodes on our friend Bobby Leon. He was our resident Catholic. Kind of feel bad shitting on the Catholics, and we don't have anybody to kind of push back. It's never
the thing. We're
fair.
sharing the Catholic ideas, not the Catholics themselves.
Yeah. Well, so it's fair enough. So guys, I really hope you enjoyed the show. Thank you everyone for watching, and we will see you all next week.